Welcome everybody to this week's session from our Microsoft Power BI UK user group. Thank you very much for being here with us this month. And just before I go in to introduce our guest speaker, I'd just like to go through some general housekeeping for the group. So whilst we go through this meeting, if I could ask all attendees to ensure that your microphones are muted and also that you have your cameras turned off. If you do have any questions, as I was just about to say, we can go into the chat functionality where I'll be active and moderating the questions for Chris later on in the session. Okay, so without any further ado, like I say, welcome everybody to the Microsoft Power BI UK user group. And this week or this month's session is with none other than Microsoft MVP, Chris Wagner. So Chris is not only a data god himself, but the founder of Kratos BI, whereby the data gods, which I'm sure that everybody is more than familiar with, started off from. Chris has been working in the data and analytics space for nearly 20 years now, and he's dedicated his professional data career to making sure that information is available to the masses and providing his knowledge to other people as well. So without any further ado, I'll hand over to Chris.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. So excited to be in my first truly international presentation. So hopefully this is good. This will be the first of many. So very excited to be meeting with everyone and talking with you, especially about this topic. Just a little bit of introduction here. I got a little slideshow. We'll start. We'll run through that, and then we'll get over to a some little demo. My name is Chris Wagner. I'm the analytics architect for Rockwell Automation. I provide analytical support for 1,400 Power BI engineers and analytics engineers at Rockwell. We've got 300 people who are building out content that's broadly shared inside the organization, and a cohort of like 30 people who are building out enterprise analysis services models that I have more direct oversight with. I'm also the founder of Kratos BI, as well as a Microsoft Data Platform MVP and a Future Edge 50 award winner for solutions built in Power BI using this NLG technology. So I am super excited to be here. I've been dealing and working in data and analytics for like 20 years. As you know, Leanne and I were talking about before the
Sorry, Chris, we've just lost you on mute.
Hello, are you back?
We are indeed.
Okay.
So if you can pick back up from, and Leon and I were talking from before the session, that'd be great.
Excellent. We were talking about how data and analytics as a practice is incredibly new to the human experience. Accounting has been around for like 2,400 years, and people are still learning how to work and operate in that framework, right? Like, you know, that's still a confusing and a complex topic. Data and analytics, which is much broader than just accounting, has only been around for a tiny infinitesimal fraction of that time. So it's always important for us to find more ways to go back to the basics and find new ways of engaging with users and finding ways to communicate data and analytics to different audiences. And that's why I absolutely love the NLG topic. All right. Now, this is for you, right? I'm not here to talk and hear my own voice. So please post questions in the chat. I am always happy to speak on this subject on the fly. I'm very comfortable in talking about almost any topic in this space, as well as also acknowledging when I just don't know something and move on, because like I have a very, I'm very knowledgeable and deep in some areas, but not in others. So happy to help and answer questions wherever people may have them. So please, you know, just post them in the chat. All right. Now, what is NLG? This is a brand new topic that has, frankly, this has been something that people have been asking for the entire time I've been doing data analytics. But this is basically natural language generation, right? Like, tell me what the data means in English, right? I can't tell you how many people I've shared a report with or shared analytics with, and they look at you with dead eyes. They look at you blank in your face, and it's like you're talking another language, right? Uh, well, it's the first time I'm presenting international, but I suppose there's some people here that speak French, but in America, nobody speaks French. And it'd be like when you present a report, it's often like you're speaking French. They have no idea what you're saying, right? And that elusive, what does this mean? Uh, there have been many products over the years that people have attempted to create that like explanation behind it, and it was always really just a string of if else then statements. Just garbage. Um, and about 3 years ago, maybe even four, I was told that at the job I worked, I had to evaluate this NLG vendor. And I said, I'm too busy. I'm working 70, 80 hours a week. I don't have time to evaluate this BS, right? I don't. I told my manager no. And he said, you have to. And I told him, jump off a bridge. And he said, this is your job. And I said, all right, fine. I will give you from the time I get up on Saturday morning to the time my wife gets up on Saturday morning to evaluate this. And he said, okay. And I got up at 4 or 5 in the morning and I started to play with this. And at 7 o'clock at night, my wife came down to my office and just said, what are you doing? Where have you been all day? Have you been in here working? Like, she had no idea. I had been so entrapped and enthralled with how easy it was to use these tools and the stories that were being generated through these NLG applications that I couldn't break away. It was like reading an infinitely generating novel of fascinating insights and uh, um, things that I was just going through and validating. Is this right? Oh yeah, I mean, I just fed in a dollar amount and some dimensions, and they told me this story, and they tell me sales rose 18%. Well, I didn't tell it sales rose 18%. Is that right? To go in and do the math. Oh, sure enough, 18. It was incredible. All right. Now, and the reason this is important, and Gartner talks about this, and they've been talking about this for a number of years, is that they're really predicting that if we want to get real penetration and get users adapting using the data and analytics that we're providing, they're saying that 75% of the used analytics is going to be augmented by these types of narratives that get added into it. Because we are finding out that 65% of employees are not getting the insights that they need to drive their business from the data and analytics that they have, right? That means that we as a community need to really up our game, right? Like, we're creating something and this works for a segment of that population, right? 35%, hey, great, we've done a good job with, right? But we have a long way to go in addressing the true needs of the organizations that are out there. Now, the whole reason for this is speed, 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 right? The things that are going on inside business are changing at such blinding fast paces that we just straight up cannot keep up with it. If you're the CEO or you're the CFO of a company, you can just wave your hand and say, I need to know blank. And the analysts spring to action, right? And we all run around, we go through and we figure out what the CEO or CFO was asking for, right? And I'm sure everyone here has been through one of these fire drills. And if you have not been through a fire drill, oh, it's fun. but that's the CEO and CFO, and maybe a handful of other senior leaders we do that for. But as the digital revolution continues on, and as data and analytics becomes more accessible to more and more people throughout that our organizations, they have the same questions, they have the same needs, and we need to find ways to be able to provide it when where they are and when they need that, right? And that's what this NLG automation allows us to do, is bring that in and implement that as part of these solutions. Now, there are many NLG vendors that are out there and solutions. I've been through and I've done like a lot of the work in evaluating all of them, and so if you don't have time, I'm going to share with you today my evaluation of the 3 solutions that are out there, and we're going to touch on simplicity, customization, the narrative that's generated, and the overall solution. Okay. A little bit about the vendors that we're going to talk about. One is the Microsoft solution. I don't know if you're familiar with, well, this was just rolled out last November, the ability to add in a narration inside of Power BI. This is the fact that it's now available inside the service as a preview feature is incredible. What this can do just natively out of the box inside of Power BI. Okay, so I researched and evaluated Microsoft. I also went in and evaluated Aria solutions. Aria builds out NLG solutions that really span the entire architecture, right? So they on one side they've got Aria for BI, which integrates with Power BI or Tableau or any of your BI solutions. But that same engine and those same capabilities can be integrated across applications, answers. I mean, wherever you are, Aria can exist and provide an API feed into it, so that from BI to Excel, wherever you are, Aria can be there. It's and they do that by having an API that basically any data that comes in from whatever source that can pass that information into that API, it'll generate that narration out of it, and it does it in real time fairly easily. All right, and then the final solution that I evaluated was Narrative Sciences. Narrative Science has been like one of the longest running players in this space. Narrative Sciences solution, they actually are responsible for a lot of the NLB or National Baseball League online ticker feeds and reports or news articles that you see that show these reports in real time. Really, a lot of that stuff from baseball to basketball to golf, all of that is being generated by, or much of that is being generated by Narrative Sciences. So it's just it is quite impressive. But their solution does span from the data sciences all the way through down to what can be consumed by an individual user without any real deep knowledge or needs, right? And the big key here is they work on that this should be accessible with no or low configuration. The narrative should be in plain English, and it should be truly readable, and it should be akin to I've always called it a USA Today story, or a story you read in the newspaper, right? And then it also needs to be interactive, right? So as you work with a report, that story that gets generated gets changed and updated. Okay. All right, so these are the 3 that I went through and reviewed, and I'm going to kind of show it to you. I'm going to show you how they work, and then I'm going to show you how easy or not it is to build out each one. All right, so I just switched over to Power BI. Can everyone see my Power BI screen?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, great. So this is my augmented analytics for Microsoft. Basically, I use their this is the smart narrative visual that got added in, as I go in and I interact with it, with my report and my data, come on now, it rewrites itself in real time. The insights are actually fairly decent here. You could see what are the measures that are being used, but then you can also see the narration that's being generated, right? Like, had the highest average reseller sales amount, right? Like that is what's being written and generated here, right? When it comes over to Aria, um, a similar situation when it comes to building out these analytics. Again, we can interact with it. And we can, come on now, why are you not interacting? There we are. It can rewrite itself in real time. Now, one of the things I like to do also, and I skipped over this in the previous one, is when I think of a narration, I want to see it in two different formats. And as part of this test, I want to make sure that this would work, is I wanted to see it not just as a full-on narration as to what's described going on inside the business, but I also wanted to make sure that it would work in a smaller solution with like a pop-up, so that I could hover over and create a narration that people could work with and interact with. Okay, so I evaluated both of those. It was fairly easy to get these up and running. Same thing with narrative sciences. Was able to get this all set up and configured so that I could interact with it, and the narration would, come on now, the narration would rewrite accordingly. All right. Now, you ask, how do you get these things set up? It is fairly straightforward. Oh, I didn't reset. Narrations for the smart narratives for Power BI is well, frankly, it is one of the easier things to get up and running. You do have to go into files, options and settings, options, and you do need to enable the preview feature for smart narrative visual. This is something you do have to turn on still. It's not GA, but it does work, and it's actually in the 5-6 months it's been out. It has actually, I think, improved quite a bit in the narration. But to use it or to generate it, I don't know if you saw how easy it was. I build out a report of all the measures and analytics that I want my narration to be around. And then I go up to the smart narrative visual and I click on it. And that's it. Right. So, as you could see, I didn't do anything, right? Like this is as close to data magic as you could possibly get, right? Like nothing up either of my sleeves, right? I went from nothing to something, right? So, yeah, you can't get easier than that in adding that in, right? So super effective. The stories are getting better. The narrations are getting better in this space. Really quite good. All right. Now let's look at Aria. Now, oopsies. Now, whenever I do an Aria build, or whenever I'm building out a natural language using one of the custom visuals that are out there, I do recommend that you start with the data as you're wanting to pass through in your API to provide a feedback on. And in fact, one of the development patterns I really prefer is to have two visuals, one that has my data on it and one that has the narration on it. So I can kind of see back and forth what's being passed and understand the narration that's coming out of it. Okay. In this case, I'm going to start with a grid that I've built out that like kind of interacts the way I want it to, right? It's working. This is all good to go. I'm going to download and add in the Aria natural language um, custom visual, right? So that's just add, get more visuals, import from a file, and then you add it into your report. Fairly simple. Once I have this built out, this grid though, I will select my Aria natural language visual. It will then go through and generate a story for me. Now I'm going to quickly show you how you can actually configure this. So I go into NLG apps, I log in.
Just at this point, whilst you are logging in, Chris,
Mm-hmm.
one question for you is that we're going in to do a configuration now around Aria, but for Microsoft's inbuilt smart narratives, is there also anything that is configurable for that visual?
That's a great question. Here, let me go back and show you that quick enough. You can go in here and you could custom. So there are two different routes you could go to build this out. One, you can leverage build out an entire page of the visuals and the data that you want the narration on. Frankly, I have found that to be the easiest, right? Even if this is not a page that you want to show people, but build out the trend lines, build out the specific measures, build out the items that you want your visual to describe for you, and then automatically generate your visual. That will configure the visual to be looking at those measures, and it just kind of works. You can then copy and paste this into any other experience, and you'll be able to leverage that same format wherever you're going. So you can go down that way. That is the easiest path I've identified for building out this narration.
Yes.
Um, Using the smart visuals, you can go in and you can get very granular when it comes to defining this, writing this out. You can really spell this out if you want. So you can totally customize that yourself. All right. But this is the easiest path that I found to generate these. All right.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Yep. When it comes to the Aria NLG, where am I? I do find it's easiest to go into focus mode, so I get my entire pane to configure this. But again, this is not hard, right? We're not talking about a configuration that like is a whole bunch of JSON or someone has to learn C sharp or like Node.js, none of that, right? Like this is something that you can do and anyone inside your organization can do, right? Like this, like any of your Power BI developers can draggy, droppy, clicky, develop this, right? So, like all visuals in Power BI, I created the items that I wanted my narration to be around. I just dragged them into my visual pane. I go into the customization window and I set up all of the pieces that I'm looking for. Now I know I wanted to do a time-based analysis, so I made sure that I had a year and quarter inside of here. I broke things up by the English product category and by occupation, and that the measure I was evaluating was internet sales amount. I will point out that the Aria does require you to, if you're going to do a time-based analysis and you want a specific drill path, it requires you to create a date hierarchy and include the items that you're looking for inside there, and they have to have specific naming conventions for it to work right. Which uh, honestly, it took like 3 minutes of training from the Aria team to explain that to me. So just be aware you have to do that. It's not hard though. As soon as you get through those 3 minutes of training, all right. You go to the next window.
Chris, just while we're moving on to the next window, if you don't mind,
Yeah,
we have a question from Samir,
sure.
and he's asked, do we need to have a date in the measure?
So in Aria, if you're doing a time-based analysis, actually in this one, like I'm only using year and quarter, right? So it's a year in a specific format, it's quarter in a specific format, and it works just fine. Okay. I define it as date, time, and evaluation, and that's what it takes. All right.
Fantastic. Thank you for answering that.
No problem. I go on to the next step. It asks what type of analysis I want to run, and I can do many different types. I can go into descriptive stats. I wanted to do a time-based variance, right? So I chose, I want to do internet sales amount by quarter, and I want to compare latest to previous, right? And I could just go in here. I can define this. There are some other analysis that you can go into. Again, 3 minutes of training or so on each one to get it up and running, to understand the differences, and you're off to the races. But we're going to keep this one simple. We're just going to do the time-based variance, and we're going to move on. And then we can configure how detailed do we want the narration to be, right? Do we want just a high-level summary? Do we want just the important things, or do we want a full tell me everything story, right? So in this case, I'm doing evaluation, so I want to go as deep as it can and see what's being written, and so I'm going to say tell me everything. All right, and then that's it, right? Generate text and like bing bang boom, I am out. So my narration is done. I have this available. I can even, as I said before, I can copy and paste that into a tooltip that I could use in other places. Please note, if you are building a tooltip, you may be inclined to use your page size on like the tooltip thing. Please make sure that if you do this though, you give your visual enough room so that it can fully write whatever it has to say, because in a tooltip you cannot scroll. So this is not quite right. So I need to adjust my page size so that my visual completely fits in there, right? And once my visual is good, I'm good to go, and I could test out on my Aria that not only does this work, but I can then go in and I can set my tooltip, and I could set it to my Aria tool page, and I now hover over it, and I've got an Aria tooltip set up there. Okay.
Fantastic, nice and easy. I mean, Chris, with that, there are a couple of questions off of the back of that, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So one from Neil Cooper, which is based around the smart narrative. If it isn't given the message that we want as users to highlight, do you have any tips to highlight particular areas of the data?
Yeah, honestly, like I said, build out a page that's focused in on the messages you want to tell, right? Build out that page that's filtered, sliced, diced, doing what you want it to do, and then add in the narration on top of that, and then copy and paste that into whatever experience you want. That is the best way. Otherwise, you can totally go in and build this from scratch. Frankly, any text box you add natively gives you smart narrative capabilities right inside of it. So you can go in and customize and build. You can build your own measures inside of there. Honestly, you can go super deep into this in ways that I have not gone that deep, because by building out pages the way I'd want what the narrative to focus in on, and then auto generating it, I haven't had to go deep into it. So that's been able to solve all of my issues.
Fantastic. And just one last question before we continue, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
If we were to export each of these reports with the smart narrative or the Aria visual, would it render in the PDF? So for some visuals, generally around map, I find that when you export a PDF, you don't get the actual rendered map because it takes a couple of seconds to generate. Would that be the same for the Aria visuals and the smart narrative?
I don't know. we'd have to test that.
No problem at all.
Yeah. All right. Do you have any other questions there?
Not for the time being, Chris. No.
Okay. Oh, actually, I see. Harshit asked for how does the backend work? So Aria and Narrative Sciences offer two different competing solution or similar solutions for how this can work. You can either leverage their backend, their cloud-based secured backend, to be able to pass that information back and forth, and it just generates it out. I understand they're both using no logging on the data that's coming and going, so that it's protected and you're still good to go. But they both offer the ability for you to if that's not secure enough for you, they offer the ability for you to install and run Aria or Narrative Sciences servers on your back end, so that you can send that information back and forth and know that it's never leaving your VPN, or it's never leaving your secured space. Please note, if you do that, you might have some configuration things and networking solutions that you have to work out. Because Power BI is a mobile, a lot of people build out mobile solutions, so that means that your Power BI mobile device will also need to be able to hit that service on inside your organization. So make sure you're taking the appropriate time and energy to set up your firewalls and security right, so that works on mobile for your organization. All right.
Fantastic.
Okay. All right. I'm going to be going on to the next one here. Yep. No problem. So narrative sciences. Now, narrative sciences is the first one I worked with that really just worked. It's the one I spent like that 14-hour Saturday on. I was blown away at the narrations that came out of it. So like, hey, biased here on these things. So but all of these are great. Setting this up again, like I said, start with the grid, add the items that you want, import the narrative sciences visual, click on the visual, and then inside here, it's going to ask what kind of narrative you want. I'm going to say I want continuous. Did I do that wrong? I did that wrong. Sorry. Oh yeah. Sorry. Continuous. And now narrative sciences, and I could be done, right? That could be the end of my story. I could say, and I'm done creating this, but I can again go into focus mode, and I have over here a few things. This is a new feature that I absolutely love, because it's copy it. Now I've copied this narration, so I want to send this off in an email to the executives, or I need to send this to a manager or whatnot. Super easy to copy and paste this. Or if I've built out a customer services log or dashboard for my customer services agents, and a client calls in, and when the client calls in, our phone system automatically pops up a Power BI dashboard that's filtered down to that client, and they have the all the relevant stats, customer satisfaction stats, and hit issue ticket history and all that good stuff, as well as a narration around what's going on inside the customer. That pops up. I can easily just copy it and paste that into my support ticket as a baseline understanding of, like, hey, what do we know about that customer when they came in, right? So it's super easy to add that in. Yeah, I just absolutely love this one. But back to configuration. So again, going to focus mode. Now this allows me to do in-text narration. We're not going to go into that right now, but I go to configure. Again, configuration is clicky, draggy, droppy type thing. I can decide how detailed I want to go. I can slim that down as much as I want. We'll stay with 3. I can determine for fiscal year, I don't want it to be entities. I want it to be year and years, right? Territories. Didn't spell that right. Right. I can even add in variations, like if I want to change it up so that the story that's being told goes deeper and richer. And if you're making something that's customer facing, maybe you want to do that so that when people come in, the information they're reading starts to take on more meat and substance, right? I can set how I want it to look at information, either from the past to now or from now to the past, right? I can say, okay, for internet sales amount, this is money. Larger values are good. And should they be summed up? Sure. Right. All of these configurations real easy to define. And as you can see, the narration dynamically rewrites itself as it's going. Depending upon what you're evaluating, you might have like if you're doing like percentages, you might want to call it out as proportional, that type of thing. For the data scientists out there or citizen data scientists out there, you could start to get into and play with, some of these details. I had a few data scientists that were very interested in tinkering with these to, get it just right or get it within the range that they wanted to display things on. And then on my display, I always recommend if you're going to highlight good changes, make them green so that they stand out. But bad changes, this is a little bit of the psychological thing for people. Studies have shown that we over respond negatively to red visuals versus purple. So instead of going with red, go with purple. That still calls things out, still triggers our brain that this is bad, but we don't over respond negatively to the purple than we do to red. So that can help people level set and provide the appropriate emotional response to the information in the data, right? Because there's nothing worse than an executive flying off the handle on something that's not as big of a deal as it is, but I'm not going to necessarily tell them. But all right, and that's it, right? So like, that's the configuration that's there. I can also go through and honestly, I can say if I want it to be a bullet list or I can do a paragraph. And I'm going to admit I'm using a very old visual. Mine broke at one point in time, but you can actually turn it into a full-on newspaper story. And honestly, I built one time that generated a story that was 20 pages long. I thought I could not imagine an easier way to build out my or if that had been around, I would not have had to have my MBA capstone thesis paper would have been so much easier for me to generate back in the day. So I guess maybe I'm glad it's broke, or this is a cheat for any of you who are working on your MBA. Get a copy of this custom visual, get some data, and be done with it.
Sounds like the way forward, Chris. We do have a couple of questions at this point.
Sure.
So one's from Samir, and he's asked, do we need to be connected to the internet always? And what about data privacy?
Great question, Samir. Yes, you do need to be connected to the internet always with these. I don't know how you would not be connected to the internet if you're publishing and presenting Power BI service items out. Right, the service is in the cloud. If you have people with desktops, maybe you could fake it, but you would have issues with these visuals. You might be able to do the Microsoft one without internet, but this is API driven, so I'd find it hard to believe that you wouldn't have an issue with that if you were without internet.
Yeah, definitely one to put to the test.
Yep.
And another question from Joe Price. First of all, she says, great demo. And she also, the question is, are there any additional costs involved with using Aria and narrative science for the PBI visuals, e.g. subscriptions?
Yep. So yes, Aria and Narrative Sciences are both a service that you purchase in addition to what you're paying for Microsoft. Their licensing are negotiated on a case by case, client by client basis. So connect out to the various sales teams as necessary as you want. To drive these in. And there's some kind of reasons for it, especially if you're inside of a regulated industry and you're going to be using these around some financial information or client facing items. There are some security and back end auditability features and functionalities that these offer that you kind of want to add these into your solution, and paying for it most of the time becomes almost your security and compliance teams will be happy to pay for it to gain this functionality because it's not terribly expensive, but there is a cost. Good question.
Perfect. And there are links to all of these solutions within the chat. So thanks
Yep.
for asking that, Chris.
Yep. Okay, so that's the demo. We're going to kind of run back to like where they stand. Now, remember, we evaluated on 4 different points: simplicity, configuration, narration, and overall solution. When it came to simplicity, yeah, I said, really, and you kind of saw it like gold stars or gold medals to Microsoft and Narrative Sciences. I mean, just draggy, droppy, clicky, droppy, super easy to configure. Like anyone can get up and running inside of this. But like a close silver medal to both of them, like 3 minutes behind of training, right, which is not a lot, right, is Aria. So could it be 4 or 3 gold medals? I'll leave that up to you, but I had to create some distinction between them. So when it comes to customization, I really thought Aria and Narrative Sciences really took the cake. They have tons of customization options. They have a whole bunch of features that you can fit in. I mean, I honestly, for Aria and Narrative Sciences, I kind of just scratched the surface. Narrative Sciences goes like 4 times deeper than what I showed. Aria goes 6 or 7 times deeper in functionality and customization and things that you can do. So like they really go deep, and it is very easy to customize both of those solutions and doing whatever narrative you're looking for. Microsoft is still customizable, so hey, still like full on, Aria and NLG have been out for like a decade or something like that. Microsoft's been around for like 6 months. Like insane that they're that customizable this close. Although far more technical to do your customization here. Then when it comes to the narrative generated, I mean, you kind of got to see it. Narrative Sciences really takes the cake in this. The depth and the richness of the content that was produced by Narrative Science was just out of this world. It just went super deep. At the same time, that may not be what you're looking for, right? So, some people really like. I don't know about you, but when I get an email, like you got like a sentence or two to really get to your point, or I'm like moving on because I got think like 370 emails a day. I can't read a 10-page email all the time, right? So Aria came in second, and then Microsoft came in third. I'm going to say that these awards were given out in November of last year. I am contemplating moving Microsoft up in my ranking into a silver category because their APIs seem to be generating better narrations as we go, which is is incredibly promising when it comes to the narrations, and I think the usability and suitability of Microsoft as an overall solution. So that's exciting. And then when it comes to the overall solution, I do like Aria's broader based solution that they have available as part of theirs. I mean, it is actually more integratable across your entire tech stack and everything you're doing. They just have more integration points that's available. And then Narrative Sciences is a silver. They're still excellent. And then Microsoft's is currently just inside of Power BI. So but it's in Power BI. There's nothing else you can do there. So still some good stuff there. Not bad. So here's basically the overall rankings and where everybody sits. You know, there's really pros and cons of all of these solutions. You know, you may find more that are out there yourselves, but I mean, when it comes down to a recommendation, I mean, honestly, you're going to take Microsoft because Microsoft's right there. You're going to have it. I'd really recommend you look at either Narrative Sciences or Aria in addition. It's the kind of thing you would not need both, right? But augmenting it and really enhancing your NLG strategy at your company does have some significant benefits to it. And the solution that we had that we won our Future Edge 50 award was with Narrative Sciences on our customer services dashboard in kind of the situation that I highlighted before. All right. Does anyone have any questions about this?
Yes, so we'll jump straight into a question from Jinsu. And the question is, can we use this for analysis services models?
Yes, we can. Yep.
2 thumbs up. Nice and straightforward answer, definitely. Another question from Harshit, and it is, how good is it to use when you have your data source as direct query? Good question.
So yeah, that's a now you do have to remember that it's going to be as good as your back end is able to provide that information to your front end, right? It's another reason why I like to build with a grid and the narration, because if you think about it, the data has to be populated, i.e. the grid has to be generated, and then it's the same thing, right? Your engine produces that data, sends it over to the narrative, and then up comes that narration on that data. In almost every situation that I've been able to test out, the longest, hardest part of this is on the query engine producing that grid of data and not on the narration being written. In fact, it was very hard for me to get a faster grid than the narration. But do keep in mind, it is both, right? Like, so the data has to be generated, then the narration has to be generated. No, you don't see it, right? It's on the back end, but it is a 2-step process in rendering that visual. So be mindful of what you're trying to put a narration on, right?
Yeah, definitely makes total sense. And just while we're discussing the back end, we have another question from Samir. Since these technologies are API driven, could the module behind them update and learn over time? Would we get different results? So, for instance, if the model was retrained or improved, and would there be any data privacy concerns with this?
Yeah, great question. Yes, I could say that all 3 of them are improving their back-end engine for writing better narrations as they go. Obviously, the most mature solution is Narrative Sciences on that back end, followed by Aria, followed by Microsoft. But a lot of that is a factor of how long they've been around. Again, you do have to worry about some security, and that speaks to which solution and how you deploy it, right? So for both Aria and Narrative Sciences, you can use their secured HTTPS API calls, or if you need more security and you want to install those on your own infrastructure, put those behind your own VPNs, you can do this as well. You just then have to take on the effort to update those services as Aria or Narrative Sciences does their upgrades to their solution to their models.
Thanks, Chris. Very concise answer there. Perfect. That's all of the questions from the user group at the moment.
Excellent. And I guess I think I might have run long because we also wanted to do a little bit of a Q&A on Power BI Premium Gen 2 because that is an area I don't have a deck on, but I can tell you my background and how I got into this. So I have been a member of the Power BI Client Advisory Board for 4 or 5 years now. If you're not familiar, we work we meet twice a month with Microsoft as kind of like their almost like their sprint review type things. But we meet with them about features that they're looking at either in the next 6 to 24 months. And we help them provide like feedback on what an enterprise would want. So I've been doing that for 5 years. One of the big things we've been pushing them for is a bigger, faster, better backend engine. And so a year ago when Power BI Premium Gen 2 was they were just talking about how they were going to upgrade the engine, or they had that first like prototypes ready. They came to us and asked us if we would help them in testing that out. So we took Power BI Gen 2, we deployed that internally at Rockwell. We ran it for a month or two on some of our IT-based reports and analytics, saw incredible performance and no issues. So we then moved all of our executive reports off of their old premium instances. We migrated those executive reports onto our premium Gen 2. They were blown away, or they thought the reports just got faster. We knew it was the backend service that was doing it. And so we've been in the process of frankly, I think we've upgraded nearly all of our premium instances at Rockwell over to Power BI Premium Gen 2, just because we are not seeing any issues. Everything is like truly 16 times faster, which means that like the number of things that can refresh in a time period, the speed users are getting, it's all going up, and we're seeing issues and failures go radically down. So it's a huge benefit. Does anyone have any questions around Premium Gen 2?
Fantastic. I mean, I can kick this off if that's okay. So we spoke briefly in our last session with Christian Wade on this subject, and one of the things that he alluded to, which isn't in the documentation currently, is the difference in how Premium Gen 1 and Gen 2 store the data model, the Vertipack engine. Can you go into a bit more detail on that for us, please?
Yeah. Well, I can't go into the technical detail on how they do it because that's part of their secret sauce.
Yeah.
But we've been able to notice that their new engine that they have for dynamic data model management allows us to cram in a fantastic number of models onto the same server inside the same memory without having any degradation in performance. In a way that we just weren't able to do inside of Power BI or analysis services previously. And part of our big push is we have a whole fleet of SSAS servers that are out there, but they're really capped because each model that's out there is always in memory, and you can't overload it without causing serious problems. So that's mean we've had to have many SSAS servers out there. Well, we're finding we can collapse and condense many of these SSAS servers into a singular Premium Gen 2 instance without any loss of performance. We'll still be able to do refreshes, and actually users actually see a better performance on it, all within the same space. So, going from an SSAS server with 200 gigs of memory with 10 models deployed onto it, down to an SSAS server with 20, or a Power BI Premium Gen 1 P1 with 25 gigs of memory on it, is a massive cost savings, and it makes it simpler to manage and bring all these models together.
Fantastic, thank you. So we do have a couple of additional questions as well. So one from Harshit, which is, I read one limitation about Gen 2 on the Microsoft website. Analysis services features in Premium Gen 2 are only supported on the latest client libraries. Could you please elaborate on this?
Oh, yeah. Update your SSMS. Yeah, we ran into that. We didn't realize we had to update SSMS and like our like query engine monitor. Like Phil Seamark just posted about that on Twitter. So we had people that, like myself included, I was running like 18.1 or 18.2, whatever. Like you had to like update to the latest version of SSMS, and bye all the little weird issues that we were seeing. But yeah, you have to upgrade your client side monitoring tools. But
Perfect. I think
yeah,
you just saved everybody a lot of hassle and Googling there. Okay, so next question is from Ian, and it is, did Rockwell encounter any issues with Gen 2 that you had to roll back? How was the migration process, and was it simply clicking on a drop down and picking the new capacity?
yeah. So we've had 0 issues with our deployments, and it is truly as simple as like you go into the capacity, you click on upgrade to Gen 2, and that's it. And I can say we've done that, and we've migrated. By doing that, I know we have, in some cases, hundreds of models on a premium that are deployed out into premium that we just clicked on, and it just went to premium Gen 2. No issues, no like uptick in like, oh, we lost all our connection. Nothing, no issues whatsoever. It was truly a magical experience when it comes to upgrading. In fact, the only reason I can't say we fully upgraded all of our premium Gen 2 instances, or all of our premium to Gen 2, is because currently it's a manual process that you as an admin have to go in and click on. And when I was doing that, I stopped, and it was like 3-4 weeks ago, and I like haven't been able to get back to it. So I know I've missed a few that I've got to go back and do, but I haven't been able to take the time to do that yet. But 100% get in there, get that stuff done. Test it out, right? Like don't just. Oh, Chris said it's be fine, right? But test it. I think you're going to be positively delighted by the experience.
That's what we like to hear.
Yeah.
One final question, if you don't mind, Chris, is so
Sure.
in terms of Power BI embedded, now migrating to Gen 2, you cannot actually migrate directly to a Gen 2 capacity, as far as I'm aware.
Right.
Is there any way around that, or is there any plans that you can tell us about to change that rather than creating a new capacity as such?
I believe that's all under NDA.
No problem at all. I always try and get as much insight and information as we can in these sessions, but we won't pry anymore. So no.
So something coming, something very easy, something draggy, droppy, clicky. As Christian Wade says, right? Like, but that's all I can. That's all I could say.
That's more than enough, shall we say? So thank you very much. Okay, so I think this question from Chris kind of asks a bit more around that, but I'll ask it to you anyway. So first of all, he says thank you, that's great to hear. And you mentioned currently that it's a manual process. I'm taking it this is just for premium as opposed to embedded. Will there be any Power BI commandlets coming to help to automate this?
Unclear. I know that when you do a deployment now, oh no, it's not GA yet, but at some point in time, all future ones will just automatically be Gen 2. I don't know if they're going to create an API for this because it's a one-time thing, right? Like you flip the switch and then you move on. So I just don't know. I have not heard pressure anywhere for them to add that capability in because of that. Because it's not like the type of thing that, well, I don't know any company that has thousands of these things where, you'd get a real burden on the first run, and this is not the type of thing like you would have benefits around like going back and forth. So yeah, I don't know about that.
Yeah, I think the only benefit there would be that if you are looking to upgrade, rather than have to click each one, drag it from the drop down, automate the process with all of your workspace IDs potentially.
Right. Like the workspaces were a lot, right? Like we had like 10,000 workspaces. We needed an API that helped us migrate those into V2, right? But nobody's got 10,000 premium capacities, at least that I know of. And
give it time, hopefully. But no, Chris, first and foremost, I just want to say thank you very much for an amazing session. There was so much to learn, take in, and give back to the audience there, and it was so well presented. So thank you very much for that.
Well, it was my pleasure being here. I really appreciate, everyone connecting and watching, and please feel to reach out, connect with me on LinkedIn or follow me on Twitter. Great. What the heck's my Twitter handle? I don't even know. I have a Twitter handle.
That's one that we haven't put in the chat. So all of your other links are available in the chat. So please do follow, connect with Chris on LinkedIn, on YouTube, and we will find the Twitter handle.
Kratos BI.
Which is Kratos BI. Okay, so be sure.
There's a link.
Fantastic, perfect timing, and it's available in chat for everybody as well. Watch this space because we do plan to have Chris back in the future. Hopefully, we're going to keep these fingers crossed, and he'll come back with some more tidbits of wonderful information for us in the future. And I'd like to thank everybody from the group for joining us, because you could have been anywhere in the world, but you've been here with us, the Microsoft Power BI UK user group, in association with Onyx Data, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks all.
Thanks, everybody.